Hey everybody, so after I got early access to EU5, I did a video going over a Q&A and trying to answer as many questions as I could about EU5. That's because when I look for videos on games, I often think, could I just get someone talking about it and giving me information on it, giving me things to get hype over? So if that's the sort of video that I would like, then that's the sort of video I'm going to do for you guys. Now, my last video, I mostly went over Q&A, and I do on my Discord have more questions being prepped up that I'll probably do a second video answering those. But for now, due to the fact that they released the map of the game, we're going to be going over, because in my Q&A, a lot of people were asking me questions of how much content is there in the game, how much will I be able to do things, how unique is each country, does this country have content, is this depicted in the game? And because of that, I think a lot of people want to know how much content is in the game, which is a lot. There is a lot of content in the game. And so I'll be generally going over as many countries as I can, and this will take a very long time, their unique starting position, their unique content, as well as just generally how powerful and how fun that country is going to be. Now, before we start going into that, I do need to remind everybody that I cannot show anything from the game, and I do not want to be giving a review of the game. I also don't want to be going over the balance too much of the game. Tomorrow, it looks like they're going to put out, maybe next week, another large update to the game. So giving my opinion on any balance or any systems like that is probably not going to be what I'm going to be trying to do here, because I don't want to just be insulting the game or giving a bad opinion on the game in any way, especially as we're closing into its release. And as we close into its release, they're fine-tuning a bunch of systems. I'm giving feedback. Lots of people are giving feedback, and they do seem very receptive to it, and they are improving a lot of things. And not to say the game is bad right now, but we have seen videos of people just saying, well, this system is bad. And it's like, well, okay, but that system's also being reworked in a little bit, so it seems a bit jumpity. Okay. I can't show anything from the game, so we will be using this map, and I know it's a bit pixely, but you're going to have to grin and bear with it with me. Okay. Before I go any further, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment down below. When you guys do leave a comment, that gives me information on things that I can do or not do in my next videos. It also tells me what you like and don't like. If there's anything in this video you particularly do like or do enjoy, then if you tell me that, then I can know to continue to do that thing. Because, and this might shock a lot of you people, as a YouTuber, I just make this up as I go along, and you know, it's like I'm giving you food with no instructions, and I'm like, did you like that? And so yeah, okay. I did a bunch of takes for this, and I cannot remember if I went over it, but I think we'll be going over it again. We're just generally going to be going over a country's unique starting position, their strength, and how much content and fun they have. Okay. So we're going to go from the west to the east so that hopefully I don't miss anybody. So let's start with Ireland. Ireland does have content, and they are in a very weak position. And there is a guy who's actually trying to do a bunch of Irish stuff right now. But sorry to say, unfortunately, most of the content and experiences in the game right now are for nations relevant to the early modern period. Being that Ireland is not too relevant to the early modern period, this game does start in 1337 and it goes until 1800. We're going to call that the early modern period. And in that early modern period, Ireland didn't do a lot. Now, surprisingly, Ireland does have some unique mechanics, but they start in a very weak position. And frankly, talking about them too much is not really going to be helpful, because I'm sure you guys want me to go over the more interesting nations. Sorry, Irish people. You do have some unique content. I do believe you can become like the king of the Celts or something weird like that. I just haven't personally looked into it too much. I do have nearly 200 hours into EU5, but in those 200 hours, again, you need to consider that it takes 12 to 20 hours to play one nation just into like the mid 1400s. This is a long game. And if I'm trying to look at their content and experience things and actually analyze everything, that I just simply do not have enough time. It would take me over 1,000 hours probably to play every relevant nation to a reasonable conclusion. It would take me much more than that, in fact, probably 2,000-3,000. So unfortunately, Ireland didn't really make my list of countries I think were useful to spend my time on. As for Scotland, I did play a little bit of Scotland. There is actually content for Scotland. The unique content for nations generally will go into, you've got advancements. Those are like your technologies. For people that don't know, instead of just having like Miltech 1, Miltech 2, Miltech 3, you have unique advancements that you go through. So like you'll unlock the age 2 in heavy infantry, then you'll unlock army morale, then you'll unlock a building, and you go through them one by one, unlocking them. So unique advancements would then be things like that. They could, the majority, I would say like 80% of them, 85%, maybe even 90% are probably just buffs to your country. Now that does also mean that if you have a unique advancement, it has to be worth something taking, because generally if you have like 5% discipline as an advancement, you'll go grab that, but most of them are not at that level. So weak advancements you can just skip over, and strong advancements you might also just not rush right away. So unique advancements are something you have to get. You don't just obtain them for being a special Scotland. England, for example, does not just have a better navy just because they're England, whereas Castile does because they're special. Don't ask. At any rate, Scotland does have some unique advancements. They do have, in fact, I would say on average, you got like 15 advancements is what an average country will have. The more important ones, let's say England, France, Castile, Austria, Muscovy, and Ottomans. I would say those are the big ones. Ottomans definitely are the number one, and I would say Austria trails behind a little bit. But those ones get more advancements than other people. There's also unique government reforms. Those are just generally buffs to your government. And then estate privileges, there's actually a lot of unique ones as well for different countries. And I would say that's where Scotland pulls out ahead. They definitely have a lot of unique advancements, and they definitely have a lot of unique government reforms, and they definitely have a lot of unique estate privileges. I would wager between estate privileges and government reforms, there's maybe 5, 4, 3 at the lowest unique ones. I'm trying to remember, but the ones I do remember seeing, it's probably about 4 or 5. Yeah, the ones I did see were quite powerful, weirdly strong, and helped Scotland. Although it's a very poor nation at game start, mostly made of tribes, it does actually kickstart Scotland into starting to get into the game. They also have a pearl. So this is more talking about their starting position. They're very poor, but they do have pearls at game start, and they can start building up their RGO on that. Exploiting those pearls will be a large amount of your economy, and then you do actually have a decent starting population of somewhere around 700,000. A lot of this is just going to be me remembering off the top of my head, because I don't really, like, I'm not looking at the game, right? That's actually a decent starting population, not amazing. I mean, most Italians are going to be beyond that. Serbia, Bulgaria, I think, are beyond that as well. So you're more into that secondary position, and you do need to get a lot of people out of being tribes, but there is some unique stuff you can do. You can also, after you beat Belial, or whatever that dude's name is, the rebellious dude, you just kick his ass pretty quickly. That's a rebelling nation here. He's not really a match for Scotland, unfortunately. And after you kick his ass, you can then get your, what's his name? The Bruce, I think? Is that your king that you get back? You get him back from exile in France, and then you choose what you want to be your primary culture. You can either choose to go with the South Scottish, Central Scottish, or the Highlanders, the dudes in the north. Now, the Scottish culture it's all Scottish, I believe, and then it's also Celtic, and the southern two, I believe, are British as well. So there's some, whichever one you choose with just kind of determines which one you want to go with forward. And I do believe if you choose the Highlanders, I can't remember if they start British as well. They might not. Because cultures can be in multiple different culture groups now, which is actually a really big improvement. And so the Scots can be Celtic, but they can also be British. Do you get the idea? Okay. So if you do choose the Highlanders, you can also kind of go with this weird become king of the Celts thing. But I swear I could not figure out how to make that work. And Scotland doesn't start poor, but they don't exactly start rich, and it's a bit of a slow burn start. And especially because I'd already played a bunch of slow burn starts, I was like, okay, let me move on to the next one. Okay, England. England has a ton, as you might imagine, a ton of unique advancements. They have unique longbowmen in the early game. They have tons of government reforms. They have tons of estate privileges, tons of events. Events are a big thing too. Like Scotland gets those events, and because I mean, oh man, you have to really understand there's so much content for each nation in the game. You can't just say, well, how many unique technologies do they get? Because some nations might get a lot of unique technologies just for them, but then some culture groups might get unique technologies. And depending on which culture group you are in, for example, the Dutch culture group up here has a lot of unique technologies, whereas Holland itself has a lot, but not as many as you'd think, because they've got unique cultural technologies. Castile, Portugal, Aragon, they have a lot of unique cultural technologies. Germans, shockingly, don't. Russians also have a bunch of unique cultural technologies, although Muscovy definitely has the advancements you want to get. Novgorod is okay as well, but suffice it to say that I'm just trying to say that there's so much to go when you look into how much content does this nation have. It's like you've got so many paths you can go into. Do they have unique events? Do they have unique unit types? Is there a unique unit type for every age, or is it only for one age? Do they have unique ships? Do they have unique cultural advancements? Do they have events? Do they have situations? For example, the 100 Years' War is a situation. Whether the Western Schism, whether the Pope should be in Avignon or he should be in Rome is a situation. The Italian Wars is a situation. The Hussite Wars are a situation. There's so much content for nations. It's hard, and this is why I'm trying to do this video, is I'm trying to explain to everybody just how much content there is for these different nations, right? So Scotland has a bunch of events. They've got a good early game start. Ireland also has stuff. England has so much. They've got the 100 Years' War. They've got just so much stuff. And something to really consider as I'm doing this video is I maybe know about, I'd say 60 to 70% of what's in the game. Every day I play it, and every day I learn that there's more and more and more. Like, I played Genoa, and I realized Genoa had a unique mechanic where they can turn their galleys into trade ships and turn their trade ships into galleys. And I thought, well, nobody else could do that. That's unique to Genoa. Now, does everybody have a mechanic that intense? No, but also you could end up having the Hussite Wars for Bohemia, which has a very large amount of things that you could do with that, right? At any rate, England has, obviously, this might shock you, they have a lot of content, right? And England does start, I really, really appreciate this for England, they do not start in 1800s England. In so many Paradox games, they always start England already being this economical powerhouse that was just raring to go. No, that's not how England was before. Realistically, I want to say the 1600s, 1700s. Definitely the 1600s. Before then, England was rural. They were not very rich, although they were a kingdom and they were large. They did not have this economical superpower that they're often shown as having. England, at game start, you have rural, town, city. That's how location ranks are. Rural, obviously, just being rural. Towns just being weak cities. Cities being super strong. England only starts with one city. You can guess which one that is. The rest of them are just towns, and they don't really have the best control, and England does not start off being very rich. England definitely, as compared to EU4, needs to get some sort of gains from the 100 Years' War, or they're pretty much going to be resigned to building up for at least 100, maybe 200 years, maybe actually 200 years before they get parity with Castile. And I don't think they'll ever get parity with Castile at the rate things are going. And you definitely, compared to their starting position in EU4, this one is much less rock solid. It's definitely more shaky, and you definitely need to try to get some gains out of the 100 Years' War, either taking money from France in the peace or something, so that you aren't just exiled back to England, in which case your power will be waning significantly. France, likewise, they have the 100 Years' War. They have a lot of content as well. I mean, if I went over every nation for like 20 minutes, it would take too long. So I'm trying to keep this as short as I can, right? So England and France are definitely locked together in this 100 Years' War. France also has the Avignon split. There doesn't seem to be much that you do in the Avignon split, the Western Schism. It just seems to determine whether or not you're going to giga debuff the Pope for the rest of the game. It does seem that if he gets forced into France, that I've never actually seen it happen that he got forced into France, but I've looked at some of the modifiers he can get, and it does seem to just kill him, okay? So that's not great. At any rate, France has a unique position here as well, where they have the very rich Paris, and then they don't really have much control over just about anything else. Right at game start, France looks absolutely massive and diabolical, but they're going to need a good probably 100 years to start pulling everything together. Now, of course, once France does start pulling everything together, it's going to be very diabolical for all their neighbors because they will be outrageously powerful. England, I do believe, gets 10% infantry combat. France in Age 2 gets 20% morale. And then I believe in Age 3, they get cav combat finally. I don't think they get discipline. Discipline has mostly been removed from unique advancements because it's very powerful. Not entirely, but I should say mostly. I do like that France finally has cav combat, because it's always been annoying me for a very long time that France just does not have anything to do with cavalry as a cavalry nation. And I'm not saying their cavalry was as important as like Poland, but you know, the French heavy cav was definitely a very large part of them. So France in age 1 doesn't really have much helping them militarily, but age 2 forwards, they're going to have Elan for that 20% morale. It did come back. It was like, a lot of times when I was looking at these unique advancements, the way I always thought of it was just like, oh god, that's Elan's music playing. Like, a lot of these nations have their old EU4 national ideas put into advancements, not entirely, and obviously not for every one of them, but you know, it's kind of cool to see the more popular and big ones return. I always like that. Might sound silly. At any rate, France is obviously going to be a powerhouse. They can get beat up by the English a lot, but I've never seen France actually lose the 100 Years' War. I haven't personally played it from the French side, but they'll typically get beat down in a couple phases and then start slowly pulling it back. As for Burgundy, there's nothing for Burgundy. The Duke of Burgundy and that whole situation was kind of a weird moment in history that can't exactly, like, they would have to really hard force it, and for a nation that didn't really do much, I mean, they were gone by the late 1400s, right? And so for a nation that doesn't really go that far into the early modern period, it's kind of like, why would you put so much content and so much dev time and so much effort into a nation that didn't really affect that much, right? Yeah, sorry. So France is definitely a big winner, but both these countries pale in comparison to Castile. Now, Castile, as I mentioned earlier, the Iberians get lots of unique content for them. They get some unique ships into the early game. I believe until age 3, they actually, in fact, I think it actually goes beyond age 3. Anyway, Iberians, just for being Spanish, get better ships than all the other countries. You would need a unique ship to keep up with them. Into age 3, the Spanish, I think they call it the Iberian Carrack, is like just a monstrous heavy ship that has huge advantages on everybody else. England does not just dominate the waves for being England. As compared to EU4, England is more on an equal footing. If you want your English Navy to be the best, then you're going to have to work hard at it, right? This isn't... They very much tried to go away from the system of you just win this because you're that nation. Although there are some examples, like Teutons forming Prussia will just win land battles because they're Teutons. They generally, any nation that has some sort of sea control, sea power, has some buffs to it, but this isn't like EU4 where it's like England has 19 buffs to their navy and an English heavy ship touching you causes a nuclear explosion, right? So Castile does get some unique ships. They get some unique buildings as well. They get a monstrously powerful start. I call it the Monster Truck Castile because for a nation with no real rivals, they have enormous levies, enormous wealth, enormous power, and they can pretty much just monster truck collapse anybody who's around them. So the unique situation for France, I would say, is that they really need to build up this area over here and eventually push back the British. The British need to, well, they need to build up England because it doesn't start that rich, right? So they definitely need to start doing that. The Castilians need to, I don't even know what they need to do. They just start the game so strong. I guess they just need to build up and then go either conquer North Africa or put all their money into vast colonial efforts, right? Aragon is definitely not a match for Castile, so just don't even think about that one. Castile has a lot of content, and it's kind of hard to express just how much content they have. There's so many unique advancements, so many unique things they can do. They can also participate very heavily in the colonial game, which gives them a lot of unique stuff. So even though I'm not going to talk about Castile that much, do note that it's just because they're so strong that I would say that there's no unique downside to their situation that they really need to work on. Portugal, much like England, I think Portugal only has one city at game start, so they need, I think they have a city. I think they do. It could be a town. Oh boy. I think it's a city though. And they don't have a second city because cities are where you can just stack all your population and just stack buildings and build up. So Portugal would either need to start town spamming or, you know, get everybody to migrate into their city. They do have a very early start on the exploration game. They do not have access at game start to the Azores. They don't have any of that, okay? And so because of that, Portugal, their unique situation is they're going to have to, due to their weaker army, not weak but weaker than Castile. Portugal does open the game with 10% infantry combat. Castile opens with 15% morale, so Monster Truck Castile just trashes everybody. But unfortunately, Portugal, I would say they're about a good match for Morocco at game start, even though Morocco is just like 20 times richer. But Portugal needs to manage their economy, manage their start, and start affording putting out explorers to go, well, explore, because that's their whole thing, right? So Portugal more comes down to less of a wartime gameplay and more of a managing your finances and playing super economy Tetris so that you can afford to continue to put all these expensive expeditions and finally reach the New World and start making money on that. Then there's Morocco, which, as I mentioned, is very rich. That's because, much like England, they're trying to express Morocco and Tunis more in the 1300s and not trying to express them as just their 1800s counterpart. By that, and what I mean, is that the areas on the coast are actually rich, very prosperous. They haven't hit their crisis yet. There was crises that hit North Africa, and it didn't end up going too well for them. But before that period, they were very rich. They weren't the most populated, and there were still a lot of tribes, but they had a very solidified around their cities. They just had a lot of wealth. Morocco has 3 cities right at game start. I think they have 4 total, but they have 3 cities that are just right next to each other, flowing into the ocean. And they do have a unique fort building that's a very powerful fort building as well that can become very difficult for enemies to try to siege down in a reasonable time. That does mean Morocco, although they have a pretty good starting population, I would say, I think from what I remember, like 60% of it was tribal. They need to sit there and they need to get those tribes into actually settling down and getting peasants, and they need to somehow get enough wealth out of their cities that they can eventually try to stop Monster Truck Castile from just absolutely destroying them. Because Monster Truck Castile will destroy you as Morocco. But if you don't, you start very, very rich. Now, likewise, I think then Morocco could try to go colonizing, but unlike Portugal, they don't have a best buddy next door who's just going to keep them totally safe. Unfortunately for Portugal, I should say unfortunately for Morocco, they're not like Portugal, and they actually do need to spend a lot of their army, which is going to slow them down immensely. They also start at war with Tleckman, and actually, I did play Morocco, and they get a couple of unique things they can do. Number one, you do get some... Oh, there is a lot of history in this game, too. I've kind of been skipping over that. Oh, maybe... No, I can't restart the video now, but, man, there's so much history and so many events and things you can do. When you start the war with Tleckman, that's these guys in the middle here, right? When you start the war with these guys, it tells you that Tleckman attacked Tunis, so you attack Tleckman. Now, you will vassalize them. You can vassalize them in one war, and that gives you a good bit of power right there to try to resist, well, Castile, right? You won't be able to, but you can try to. Their 15% morale opener is pretty strong, right? Now, Morocco does get access to... Let's see, they can slave raid. Now, when you slave raid, that is... Shockingly, whenever you occupy a province, a lot of it will be enslaved. And they also get access to the privateers for slaving. Both Tunis and Morocco can use privateers to enslave people. And that's just this game's version of the coastal raiding. And so Morocco can just be a dick and sit here in North Africa and just slave raid people with their privateers. Or they could sit there and go colonial. And that's a lot of what I like about this game. They do have a lot of unique things that they can do. The next thing you can try to do as Morocco is take over all of North Africa. Through an event, you do kind of get like an aspiration for that. Not so much like a literal aspiration as like it kind of like hints to you like, hey, break your rival or break your alliance with Tunis and take over. You also get another event where you can try to declare on Castile, and should you win and take some land, then you automatically integrate Granada and form Al-Andalus. So it's kind of like one last push for it, and if you fail that, I'm pretty sure it's locked off, right? But you can see I'm going to need a lot of water here. I would say it's going to be very difficult to stop Monster Truck Castile in this situation. Now, of course, Tunis does have the better galleys, but Morocco's not too concerned with naval gameplay. From what I remember, they like to sit back and make money. They're kind of like a North African money hub, but so far as the actual army quality, naval gameplay, they're not too great at that. They do have good forts, so they can sit there and just fortify, and they are fabulously wealthy, so they can do that. Okay. That brings us to Tunis. Now, whereas Morocco had all this content and actually Morocco is really fun to play, is all I can say. Morocco has some unique stuff they can do, and they're really, really fun to play. Tunis, on the other hand, is less interesting. Now, Tunis does have a bunch of North African cities on or near their north coast right here. And these cities, I think there's about 4, I think there's 3 here, 1 in Tunis, then 1 down here. So they do start with 5 cities. These cities are in a Mediterranean climate, not in a hot, arid climate. Then that's what I'm talking about too. The climate situation for North Africa is not memed to death, let's say. There's definitely this tendency, let's say, to, you can see it right here. Oh no, you can't, that's not it. Is this it? Which one is? Here we go. Here's the climate. You can see there's definitely a tendency in Paradox games to show North Africa like before they had their problems, and in this game they're not showing them like that. They're quite strong at game start. Tunis doesn't really have any events, but they do have some unique advancements. They open up with 20% galley combat. They can slave raid. They can privateer. They can enslave people. Tunis, despite not having events, actually does have some unique options to them that I actually thought were kind of cool. Number 1, if you reach galley superiority with Tunis, you can just privateer and slave raid people. 2, you can attack people and slave raid them directly. With a lot of these islands being obtainable purely on naval power, it means that you can get access to Sicily and you can invade Sicily and conquer it, and you can try to slave that stuff. You can also attack some of the Italians, and you can just land in Italy and slave Italy. They're very much slave focused, Tunis, I would say. They're very much they don't have that much content, but what content they do have is mostly based on having a lot of cities and needing people to work in those cities. Their population at game start is still decent. It's just kind of their gameplay gimmick, right? Okay. So then we've done you. There is Aragon. I have not put much time into Aragon. Now that's primarily because Monster Truck Castile scares me a lot, and I don't really want to do that. I do know Aragon has some unique advancements and things like that. Now, of course, when you do form a country, so let's go back here. When you do form a country, like when you form Great Britain, you will get some advancements, typically from the cultures that you form it from. So Great Britain will get some Scottish advancements, Scotland will get some British advancements, but the ones you start with, you keep the entire game. So Scotland will actually be a different Great Britain than an English Great Britain. Most of the time, the dominant culture tends to have more of the advancements, so Great Britain will get less from being formed by England than if it was formed by Scotland, if that makes sense there. Castile does combine some of Aragon's advancements into them as well. I don't think there's any Portuguese in there. So it does ironically mean that a Spain formed by Portugal does get a lot of unique advancements in there. There's not any advancements, I don't think, for North Africa. I don't think El Andalus gives you anything, but there are some unique events, and there's a lot of government reforms and things like that. Like these people being Sunni, being Berber, and religion does have unique content as well, I should specify. So I know Morocco can study scripts and things like that because they're Sunni, which does help them out a bit. Oh man, I'm trying to think here. There's so much content, there's so much stuff I'm skipping out on that it's hard to, I mean, I'm already 28 minutes in this video and I'm still talking because there's just so much stuff in this game, and I'm trying to not spend too much time talking about these countries. But yeah, Morocco is just very strong because they got that triple city set up. Tunis is strong because they got these north cities for unique gameplay decisions. Tunis doesn't have I don't think they have like any events actually implemented right now. That could change in the future, I don't know, but for now they don't, and I probably don't think they're going to intend to, because Tunis's historical relevancy is rapidly closing here. But I do know that I do see the Tunis AI doing decently, weirdly enough. They can use that strong starting position and do well, which does lead me to believe that Tunis is actually a pretty decently strong pick. Not amazing, but decent. Monster Truck Castile kind of messes with you because they're so overbearing in the region. Okay, so as far as unique government advancements, buildings, they do get that unique fort. Tunis gets a unique fort as well. It's called like an Aqaba or something like that. It just enhances your forts to give them more garrison and fort defense, and it just generally makes you really annoying to try to conquer. I mean, EU4 North Africa was always annoying because of core creation, but now it's annoying because they have really good forts. Okay, so that takes us to Naples. Now, Naples does have some unique events, some unique content. Naples starts fabulously wealthy. The city of Naples is one of the biggest cities in all of Europe at this point in time. They are ludicrously wealthy. In addition to that, they have one city next to their starting city, then two other cities right on the other end of the island that you can use. You only get one cabinet action to improve control. You can use other cabinet actions for the most part, not all of them, but most of them can be used 2 or 3 times. But the control one can only be used once. So, for example, you could integrate 2, 3, 4 provinces at a time, but you can only improve control in one province. Now, because of that, Naples is in a unique position where they have 2 cities right here that they are directly adjacent to each other, then 2 cities on the other end that they can put that cabinet action for control on. That gives Naples 4 cities, each of which are wealthy, each of which are powerful, making them one of the most super urban mega powers at game start. They're definitely up there with like Morocco for ability to just exert complete raw city goods, because there's rural goods and then there's city goods, and Naples can make a lot of them. Morocco can too, that's why they get so rich. And Naples can form 2 Sicilies. They can do that really quick, and at that point, even without any events, even without any content, I just think Naples start gives them a lot of interesting options because they're definitely the strongest country in the region. And you can see here they control Albania, and you can see here they control North Achaia of Greece. This gives them, once they yoink Sicily, they form 2 Sicilies, and now they can decide, do we want to conquer Greece? They can try to push down to Tunis. They can control all the islands set up here. They can try to push north and form Italy. Naples, just through their starting position, has a lot of options available to them, and they're actually, in my opinion, one of the most fun choices. Of all the countries I've played, I think Morocco is really fun just because you're so stupidly rich if you play it well. You do need to play it well, but then Castile just like pushes over your house. Naples is very rich, and they don't stop being rich ever. I mean, they've got so much to work with. Whereas Morocco, you can kind of say you'd reach a cap. I don't think Naples really reaches a cap because they are a giga powerful sea power that doesn't really have any contesting. No one really contests them. Aragon might, hypothetically. Given a fight between Naples and Aragon, I'd say it's like 50-50. But I would definitely say a properly played Naples should outscale a properly played Aragon. Now, this isn't, once again, they didn't get memed. This is not 1800s Italy that has suffered from hundreds and hundreds of years of neglect from the Spanish. This is a hyper powerful Naples that opens the game very, very strong. Their tax base at game start, their actual power is about on par with Tunis. They have an advantage because theirs is definitely more centralized, which gives them more control. But once they take Sicily, they pull far above Tunis. And at that point, I have seen Tunis and Naples go about even, but because Naples has the ability to form 2 Sicilies, they've got a bit of a lead on that one, I would say. Additionally, I would argue a properly played Tunis, even though both of them have 4 cities to work with. Yeah, you can definitely see the difference in this region of the world. This region of the world can play very, very urban, whereas as we start getting out here, maybe you'll see a bunch of that change. But Naples and Tunis, they can both play very urban. They can both get very rich. They can both try to control the sea. I would say Naples has it, like, definitely they have the advantage at any rate. That goes to the Pope. Now, the Pope does have a lot of unique stuff that he does as well. I haven't seen the Kingdom of God, but then again, I haven't really conquered that much to even see the Kingdom of God. I've looked at Pope, I've played like little touches of Pope, but realistically speaking, I wasn't really that interested in the Papal States. Now, there are some issues with the Pope's balance, mainly being that he just has a lot of gold from Europe, and then he can use that gold to just bully everybody around him. The problem seems to be that the AI Pope is expected to use that gold for the benefit of Christianity, whereas in game, the Pope uses the gold for the benefit of himself when you play them. I don't know if that'll be changed. It's not like horribly game breaking, but I do believe it makes the Pope the most wealthy European nation at game start. The top 3, I believe, are the Pope, Castile, and the Hansa of North Germany, which I'll get into later. But yeah, they're like heads and shoulders above everybody else. Genoa can get a good start going, but like in 20 years, Genoa can get to where Pope starts the game just due to their Pope gold, right? Now, Pope's content here is obviously about taking over North Italy, not North Italy, taking over, what's it called, Umbria? Just take this area over here, you know, form the historical papal states. Then they have to deal with the Hussites. They have to deal with the Western Schism. I do believe the Western Schism gives them like horrible debuffs, or at the very least hurts them a bit while it's going on, until they properly exert control to get the Pope back fully into Rome. So that does seem to be their slowdown period, but you could do a lot of work before that. Okay, that takes us to Florence. I'm not going to spend that much time on the Pope. I mean, as always, Pope does have they have a lot of unique mechanics for their estate privileges, advancements, things like that. They cannot be diplo-vassalized. I found that interesting. You cannot diplo-vassalize the Pope. It actually just straight up is not allowed. So obviously declaring war on the Pope is bad because you will be, well, condemned to hell. And in addition to that, you can't diplo-vassalize him to try to get around that. So yeah, the Pope is pretty solid in his control. And realistically, the only threat to him is Naples. You are, of course, in the Guelphs and Ghibellines situation. In that situation, by default, Naples and the Pope basically hold hands and work together. Would that work if you played them? Well, I mean, that's on you, right? But that's just generally how they go. Naples and the Pope just don't really end up fighting each other. Naples, from what I've seen, mostly actually ends up just being a schizo and not really doing... I don't know what Naples does. Tunis seems to be, like, very focused. I've seen Tunis, like, no CB Italians and islands like 10 times in 50 years. Like, it's like 5 years are up and Tunis is just like, all right, it's pirating time. Naples, on the other hand, seems to be a lot more timid. Tunis is a rabid dog and Naples not so much. So you do have the Guelphs and Ghibellines situation that, of course, is to get Italy out of the hands of the emperor. Naples gets some unique actions they can do in that one. They're not too impactful, but they can click buttons and they're fun. I like clicking buttons. Other than that, yeah, we go to Florence here. Now, Florence does, as we start getting to North Italy, you're going to notice a huge shift here. He has lots of actions about the rise of de Medici. Oh, boy. So the Medici family actually rises as a banking family. They actually do spawn a building-based Medici bank. You do have the de Medici bank. I found that one pretty cool. And they have a bunch of unique government reforms, some estate privileges, and of course you do have the uprising of the peasants. When the peasants do uprise, you can put them down with de Medici. You do get two options. Now, normally whenever there's a historical event, you have the historical option, and it'll tell you this is a historical option, and then you get some other events. Most of the time, the other events aren't really too interesting or don't do too much, but the Florence one I found funny because you can either get a disaster and send in the Medicis, or you can get a disaster and then decide to just become a peasant republic and lose to them. Peasant Republic isn't too impactful. That was something asked on my previous comment section. A bunch of people asking about Peasant Republic. All it really does is massively depower anything that isn't the peasants. There doesn't seem to be any actual gameplay changes other than just changing the power dynamics of your different estates. But you can choose to just become Peasant Republic Florence, I guess. Or you could just stay the historical option and just basically beat your peasants until they can't afford to eat. Florence does, of course, have the Tuscany formable as well, which gives him some unique stuff. I played a bit of Florence. It was fine. I didn't hate it. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I mean, you're definitely the strongest Central Italian other than the Pope. Pope's obviously stronger than you. You have some unique stuff. It just, in comparison to the North Italians, I just think that Florence... I mean, Genoa is obviously the coolest, so if I do talk about Genoa here, they have, like, so many... Their starting situation is just absurdly strong. It's actually insane. I don't think it's very historical how powerful they start, but because their values, like, if a country's gonna be a land or naval... Now, land and naval does get some people confused. It's not like land gives you discipline, naval gives you heavy ship combat. That's not how it works. The land-naval split determines how you get your control. Naval gives you more control over seas. Land gives you more control over land. Genoa starts so much in naval control that they can already take some unique government reforms that buff their navy up, which is funny. They also start not being a merchant republic, but rapidly get an event turning them into a merchant republic. Then once they do that, they get some unique estates that give them overwhelmingly high power to, or I shouldn't say power, loyalty of your estates. So you end up being very stable. And then you get the election, which I'm not sure Genoa's election works historically. What Genoa does in game is gives all their nobles, all their leaders, very rigorous exams where they check their aptitude towards strength, intelligence, everything. And only the best and the brightest of Genoa, their strongest, smartest, quickest people get to be on the election, and then you elect from the 3 of them. So you'll literally always get your 3 most intelligent, bestest people ever, and you choose the best one to lead the country. Historically, that's not quite what Genoa did, but in game that's how it works, which I find funny. Other than that, Genoa just has, oh god, in Age 2, Genoa gets the Genoese crossbowmen, which might be one of my favorite units. It is an outrageous, it's a heavy infantry that also gets light infantry initiative, meaning right when the battle starts, all the Genoese crossbowmen immediately take to the front line, and it's pretty common that the levies can't do anything against them, and you're very rich, so you can get a standing army very early. Levies can't do anything against them. Nobody can really do anything against them because they are just so insanely strong. Now, the problem Genoa has is they have no army quality other than their Age 2 Genoese crossbowmen. So once we do get to Age 3, Genoa will start falling off. Their only formable is Italy. The Italy formable is, But if you want just an early game money powerhouse, Genoa is where it's at. Now, of course, Genoa does get 2 unique advancements that are very unique. One of them, well, I mean, the Tunis and Morocco ability to slave raid with piracy is unique as well. Castile, I mean, I'm kind of downplaying Iberia here. Iberia gets all these unique buildings as well. I've kind of downplayed everyone just so, I'm looking at how much time I'm taking to talk about this stuff, and I'm looking how much of the map I've talked about. And yeah, Genoa gets that unique ship thing where they can turn trade ships into galleys and galleys into trade ships, which allows them to exert lots of control over the sea while at the same time being prepared for a military fight. They get an Age 1 galley that is 50% more damage, which is very much a lot of damage. I'm not really, that's a very powerful galley. And yeah, I did all that. Yeah, Genoa is just cool. I really like them. They also get a lot of events talking about Italian stuff. It's all Italian stuff. Like, China's killing millions of people, and Italy's having a feud because an artist got bought out by their rival country. So, yeah. That takes us to Milan. Now, Milan is, I'm not sure whether or not I agree with their decision to do this, but everything other than the Milan province itself starts uncored, unintegrated. That's because Milan was given those provinces 5 years earlier by the emperor. I believe it was about 5 years. And so in game, it's represented by it not being integrated. Now, Milan, despite being much more powerful and larger than the other northern Italians, is only about on par with Verona. That's the Discallis over here, right? And so Milan, if they can get their stuff integrated, and it will take a while, and they can get going, they can be decently powerful. Milan also gets a unique event that moves their capital to Pavia, which historically they did. Way more countries move their capital than I realized. The decision to do that is okay. It gives you a unique cabinet position that it doesn't reduce the amount of aggressive expansion you generate. What it does do is a unique government position that reduces your antagonism by like a flat number with everybody per month, which is pretty decent. And then it increases your integration speed as well. So if you have that position, and it's a pretty good cabinet role, it's firmly okay. The numbers, I think, were maybe tuned down a little bit because those are like very powerful modifiers. You can get them to be pretty decent, and I'm not saying they're weak modifiers. It just definitely seems like the developers realized how strong both of those two combined would be, and so they kind of toned it down a little bit, and we're like, you know what, let's try it here because this could break the game. Milan does start with the dynastic signoria unique government reform. There's Signoria. That's what Florence has. I think it's not very good. But dynastic Signoria is very, very strong. So as you notice, I'm talking here about North Italy. Genoa has a unique government reform, unique estates. Milan has the dynastic Signoria, which is quite strong. Florence has a lot of cool stuff. So like, there's all this cool stuff in North Italy. Naples is very, very, very strong, but I just don't think they have as much content as these North Italians. Now, of course, there is, of course, the Italian wars later on. Verona, Discali, is supposed to die, so he doesn't get anything, and that takes us to Venice. Unfortunately, from a balance perspective, I think Venice is quite weaker than Genoa at game start. And I would also say that a lot of their reforms are a bit weaker than Genoa as well. If I had to pick between Venice and Genoa, I think I'd pretty much always go with Genoa right now. Now, Venice they get, I think, the most content in North Italy. Why haven't I seen it then? Because their starting position is currently so odd that it's kind of hard to get out of it in a successful way, to where I kept restarting runs and I kept not really getting that far into it. I kept trying to play Venice because I've always liked Venice. I've wanted to play Venice, but I was never very satisfied with my weak openings, and I kind of just ditched the country at the end of the day. Okay, so North Italy gets a lot of content. They get cool stuff here. I think each of these are unique. The most unique is Naples, Genoa, and maybe Milan. Milan can just become a very big land power. Genoa can go giga naval. Florence is still up there as well. Pope is cool. I mean, they're all cool. All the Italians are cool. I think Italy is probably the best expressed realm for just like how many different things can you play in the same area and have it feel very cool. Okay, so we need to kind of skip back here because if we go too far up, it'll be bad. Holland does have unique stuff as well. Many of the different Dutch miners do have different advancements, so that when you do form the Netherlands, you will have different advancements that you could start with. I believe Utrecht starts more of a land focus. Holland is more of a trade naval focus. There's some other ones in there. It's not too big a deal. We're talking about the differences of like 3-4 advancements here throughout the game. So it just kind of focuses you a little bit differently, right? Holland itself does have the hook and the cods disaster. Something like that. I don't know. Holland right now is hard to play, and I haven't managed to play them, despite wanting to play them. Because, unfortunately, there were some game changes that were made that have, unfortunately, made their start quite weak. Their start is supposed to not be weak, and that start is quite weak right now. And because of that, I haven't really actually enjoyed playing them. I think like a lot of people, I have talked to people, a lot of people are playing Holland. They do enjoy it. They do think it's cool, but I just haven't managed to see that much. They do have the Mauritian infantry in age 4 or 5, maybe. That's just another heavy infantry. Now, he's not quite as good as the Genoese. The Genoese crossbow is only age 2, by the way. Once you go to age 3, you go back to regular troops. So the Mauritian infantry, that's age, I think, 4 or 5. I can't remember. It's one of the two. He's another heavy infantry, but he's not as fast as light infantry. He's almost as the initiative of light infantry, but he's not quite there. So the Genoese crossbowman is a monster truck in age 2, like an absolute destroyer. The Mauritian infantry is good, but he doesn't quite have the level of impact the Genoese crossbowman has. So, yeah. They do get some other buffs to their army, but Holland, the Netherlands, obviously not an army country. They hook in the cod disaster. It's well made, but it's also a disaster, so it doesn't exactly feel good. You're like, wow, all this cool content and flavor text as your country is being like torn apart by negative events. Yeah. For the rest of Germany, you're gonna be shocked by this one. Brandenburg is way weaker than it should be. And right now, it's kind of unbearable to play. So I have started them a few times because I like Brandenburg, but I've never really managed to get much through it. So they do have unique content. They do have unique CBs. They do have unique events. They do have unique advancements. They do have the Prussian stuff later on. But I've never gotten more than like 10 years in the game before just exiting out because I was bored. So it takes us to... let's go to Denmark. Now, Denmark... he does have a lot of cool stuff, but they're a little bit weaker at games. Again, Denmark starts poor as shit. They actually start in debt. Lots of countries start with a surplus of money. Denmark starts in debt. And most of their early game missions comes down to selling their remaining territories outside of Denmark proper in order to get that debt back. That means selling the rest of Skane. That means selling their Estonian holdings and getting their debt back under control. They start not in a great position. Very much a fix-me-upper kind of country. Not much to do, unfortunately, for Denmark. Yeah, they do have a lot of content. They do have the sound toll. The sound toll is not as unbearable as it was in the past, I believe, because it was so unbearable. So they do just sit there and they do just kind of tariff and tax everybody with the sound toll. They're funny. They're funny dudes like that, I guess. So far as everything else, I don't believe they have any, like, I mean, the sound toll is a unique mechanic right there, right? So when I say, like, they don't have any other unique mechanics, oh, I should totally forgot about Venice. Oh, there's a cool thing Venice has, the Venetian Arsenal and the Venetian Palace. They've got two buildings. Oh my god. Venice is like the cultural hegemon of the world. You can very easily, as Venice, make your culture just the strongest culture in the entire game. The Venetian Palace, you basically pay money just to make your culture stronger. You just convert money into culture strength, which is, if you're trying to do a culture run, I've never managed to do it because I can't, but you know, you can make that strong. Now, the Venetian Arsenal, to my knowledge, I don't know if this will make it in the final game, but despite being outrageously expensive, and despite being, like, you have to have 2,000 people working it, right? The Venetian Arsenal can actually be built onto multiple locations. This does mean that Venice, instead of trying to have like 7-8 ports, could actually just have, I believe a Venetian Arsenal builds 4 ships at a time instead of 1. So if you did, you could build the Venetian Arsenal again and again. Now that's a unique super dock, but I don't know if that'll make the final game because it is supposed to be unique to Venice, but as of right now, unless there was some bug going on, I could actually build it twice, so that was kind of cool. Anyway, Denmark, what were we talking about? The less cool country. Denmark's fine. They get the sound toll. They're basically trade pirates. Okay, let's go back to Germany before I skip the rest of them. Austria has a lot of cool stuff, actually. Man, I liked reading through all the Austrian events because they come off as such, like, I don't even know the right way to put it. They're just like mustache twirling villains all the time. Your event for taking over Tyrol is basically you going like, ah, yes, the Duchess of Tyrol has promised us Tyrol. In order that she doesn't change her opinion, we'll keep her safeguarded in Vienna for the rest of her life. And you're like, did you just kidnap a duchess and take her land? Why is nobody stopping you? And they're just sitting there like twirling their mustache like, nyeh. Like everything they do is just so like, it's just so like diplomatically evil. They're just villains. I don't know. Everything Austria does is just villainous. I really found it funny. They have some cool laws they can do too. I should mention there are some laws in game that are unique to certain countries. I haven't mentioned that one either. But I just enjoyed playing Austria. They were really cool. You do get an event to move your capital to Graz, which historically I did realize happened. They kept their capital in Graz until like 1653, only then moving it back to Vienna. In game, maybe not the best decision, because if you move your capital to Graz, then you just lose all the control over North Austria that you've just like painfully built roads to and maintained. So I didn't move my capital to Graz. But you can, there are some unique, I mean, there's lots of events for Austria, like a lot. Laws, taking over land, all sorts of stuff, right? And so Austria is not even a tenth as strong as Bohemia, but they're down here, they're scaling. And yeah, I should mention Danubian is all, there's 2 forms of Danubian, or say Bavarian. There's Danubian Bavarian and Southern Bavarian. Now, Danubian Bavarian is basically all of Bavaria plus Austria. And so you can combine that culture group into a super culture. So there's definitely a world as Austria where you just ahistorically just go take over Bavaria. Likewise for Bavaria, there's a world where you just take over Austria because you're the same culture in game, right? The Southern Bavarians are the mountain Germans. I don't think highly of them because they live in mountains where you can't get any control. Their only saving grace is they have a silver mine in Tyrol. But other than that, it's pretty rough. There's also Salzburg between you. So reasonably, as Austria, your main concern, you do not start rich as Austria. You do start with a city in Vienna. Oh, I should mention the city situation. Okay, so the Netherlands don't start with the city. They just start with a bunch of rich towns, right? Genoa has a gigacity. Venice has a gigacity. Florence has a... I'm going to say it over and over. Yes, each of the Italians start with like a very luxurious urban environment. Cities and towns everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And because of that, they have a very urban play style that they can do. As we start moving in here, Holland can do urban through having so many towns, but less capable than the Italians. Denmark, not so much. They don't have a single city at game start. They're all towns. Austria has the one city of Vienna, but it's not the strongest city of anyone around you. I think between Buda, whatever the capital of Bohemia is, I should know this one, Prague. Between Buda, Prague, and Vienna, Vienna's definitely pulling lowest of the three. Krakow doesn't even start as a city, though, so Poland doesn't get invited to the party. So Austria has much more of an urban gameplay that they have to do, but they do have towns. So they're not quite into the urban gameplay yet, but they're also not leaving entirely the rural gameplay. So they kind of have to split between maxing both. Now, it's not to say you always do need to get as much money as you can out of your entire country. You can't just ignore urban. You can't just ignore rural. It just depends on like how much do you have a game start. Because for Naples, for example, I can just import a bunch of goods, turn them into better goods, then ship them away. As Naples, that's not even a big deal. I can just do that nonstop, right? As Austria, not so much. So Austria, I found pretty fun to play, really cool. Now, Bavaria also does have some unique mechanics. They do try to unite Upper and Lower Bavaria. I would consider them more like a tier 2 nation. They had more content than I thought they would have, but they also didn't have a huge amount. I would say Bavaria did have cav combat, so you could try to do a more cav Bavaria, but I think it was only like 10%, so there wasn't really that much you could do. At either rate, I thought Austria was blatantly the cooler nation, so if I'm going to play two people whose objective is probably to try to eat the other, I thought Austria just had more fun content to work with there. The Swiss do have some unique stuff, not too much. I haven't really played them. They have a unique building, and I haven't really looked into them too much. I'm going to be honest. Of all the nations that have unique content, I think I looked into the Swiss the least. Now, Saxony also does have some content. They can form Saxony. They can combine all the different Saxons. They do have some unique advancements, some unique events. They're definitely lower than Bavaria. They're kind of like... They're not super high content, but there is some unique stuff they can do there. I would say Central Germany is very black hole-ish. If you want to get content out of Central Germany, for the most part, you're relying on the situations, the events, and the happenings of other countries. Now, of course, as I have mentioned, you need to actually research advancements, and advancements are very, like, research is very limited. So it's not to say if you don't have unique content, it's not like you just can't play the game. It's not like national ideas in EU4. You could just get all the generic technologies, and by getting through all the generic technologies, you obviously are going to end up weaker than the nations with, like, really strong advancements that are unique, but you won't end up that far behind. Not really. So yeah, there is some stuff to do in Central Germany, but ironically more so the edges are the interesting part, and the middle not so much. So Saxony has stuff. Bohemia has a lot of stuff. They have the whole Hussite Wars. They have Jan Hus. They have one of the richest starts I've ever seen. I mean, they have so much gold, silver. I think they have gems. Like, what happened, Czech people? What happened? You had like a 10-0 lead. What happened? So Bohemia starts basically cheat code levels of strong. If you thought Castile was stronger than their neighbors, Bohemia, I think, could literally beat Hungary, Austria, and Poland combined at game start. Which doesn't really make much historical sense, by the way, because actually what did happen, the reason the Habsburg own Austria, the reason they own this is because they allied with the Hungarians and kicked the Czechs out of Austria, and then they gave Austria and Styria to the Habsburgs. Yeah, they awarded themselves. Amazing Habsburgs. At any rate, I think Bohemia is maybe a little bit too strong. Bohemia itself is outrageously strong. Moravia is actually really strong as well. And then even more so, all those little vassals they have in Silesia are also pretty strong. And what those little guys do is they combine like Voltron with your stacks. And you can basically beat down anyone early game. Yeah. You, as Bohemia, can practically do anything you want. Now, Czech people do count as German. They count as 3. They are counted as German, Slavic, and Czech, I believe. I think they count as all 3. Or maybe West Slavic. Maybe it's German, Slavic, West Slavic. I don't remember. At any rate, I think Polish, maybe? Something like that. They do count as 3 different culture groups. Bohemia can form Germany. You can have a Czech-led Germany, actually, that is fully allowed in-game. In addition to that, you've got the Hussite Wars events. Your content pretty much does start wrapping up after the Hussite Wars, because that's, you know, but you just start so fabulously wealthy. If you ever want just a start in this game that you just start as and you're just like outrageously strong, Bohemia and Castile are pretty much your choices of the ones I've gone through, right? So yeah, they're right next to Saxony as well. Saxony, I don't see die to Bohemia, but I don't exactly see them do great either. Now in northern Germany, we do have the Hansa. You can't see them here. They're not here. But the Hansa are a building-based country, which means all they can do is build in other countries. They have no physical presence on the map itself. They start outrageously wealthy. Like wealthy, they're about as wealthy as the wealthiest countries in the game. And they just want to trade. There is unique content for them. I haven't played them because, you know, I like owning land, but they have so many unique advancements. They have so many unique things they can do. Oh, I should also mention for Genoa. Genoa is the only landed country that can take loans from other countries. Now, that means that if a country has gone into debt, you can buy that debt and then collect the interest from that debt, which is strong for you as Genoa. I don't know how strong it really is, but, you know, there you go. So you can actually be a loan shark, but not literally a loan shark is Genoa. You just buy other people's debt, then collect interest on it. A very Genoese thing to do, apparently. But the Hansa, I would have to look more into them, but they have like, between the Hansa, between like the Pomeranian culture, for some reason the Pomeranian culture has all these unique advancements too, right? And you can get your trade range to like doubled. You can get like such outrageous buffs to your trade as Hansa, and also you can buff your navy really hard too. The Hanseatic navy can end up being pretty powerful as well. Now that takes us to Sweden. Sweden does also, you might not believe this, has some unique content. Now their gameplay revolves primarily around just AFKing in the north and settling all this land over here. Now they get a unique cabinet action where this land up here, they can dramatically increase the population growth on. And when they do that, I guess the general idea is that Sweden is expanding their population and expanding their realm without actually having to go to war or pay for it. So Sweden's gameplay is going to be very sitting here heavy. They do open with 20% infantry combat, and then in age 2 they get 5% discipline, so their army is quite potent. But at game start they have a personal union with Norway. Now personal unions in this game aren't like in EU4. In EU4 it's just I own this country now, right? It's just effectively a super vassalage. In this game, it's not like that. I would call it more like a Stellaris Federation. Over the course of 50 years, you slowly lock down their privileges until eventually you can integrate them. But at game start, Norway doesn't really have to do anything. The only thing a personal union will do is form a defensive pact with your other personal unions. That's about it. They're under no obligation to give you money. They're under no obligation to join you offensively until you slowly use those 50 years to integrate them in. So Sweden does also get a unique cavalry at age 4 or 5. I keep saying age 4 or 5. It's somewhere around there. The Hekapolita or something like that. A Finnish cavalry that has, I think, the highest initiative in the game. They basically just deploy onto the battlefield instantly. And that's pretty cool, I guess, because Sweden's obviously a very infantry-heavy country, so having the Heckapolita or whatever is... It does kind of like help them use cavalry for a little bit. Like everyone should either have fast infantry or cavalry to some point, right? But the main thing Sweden does is feud with Novgorod, eventually meddle in the affairs of Germany, and for the most part, they just want to sit here and build up and get population and do stuff like that. And they are very, very... We're starting to get into the very rural type of society where you don't really have any towns. You don't really have any infrastructure at all. Your development is low. And for the most part, if you start playing in Sweden or really anywhere at this point over here, you're going to have to start learning how to make very good RGOs and make a lot of money off of, well, rural folk. So you're definitely getting into different, like the gameplay, for example, from Morocco is going to be night and day to the gameplay of Sweden. The gameplay of Castile, France, Naples, like as we start going further and further east, we're going to start getting different ways to play the game. And in addition to that, Sweden's just got the whole colonial thing and trying to generate pops off colonizing this area. So they got some stuff there. The Teutonic Order, as you might imagine, plays very differently. They start as a holy order, and they already start at war with Poland and Lithuania, although I have heard they might remove that one, which would historically kind of make sense. I'm not so sure. At any rate, the Teutonic Order has a commandery. Now, that is a unique building that holy orders get. They can slap that commandery over people who let them build in them. They already have a bunch built at game start, and these commanderies will give them manpower. You can't really generate much manpower as nations in Age 1, so the camaraderie is a way to generate manpower for nations like the Teutonic Order to actually allow them to field a standing army. Most people, like 90% of people, are going to be relying on a levies, just the feudal levies. The Teutonic Order can actually build up a standing army. Right at game start, though, they don't really have much of one. And it's pretty frequent that they get ran over by the Lithuanian-Polish alliance. That's not to say they don't have content. They've got content talking with the Pope, trying to do this and that. They can form Prussia. They do have a more standing army-based gameplay. They do have a lot of forts. So there's definitely, like, if I played the Teutons and I played Poland, I would say like 100%, like, these starts are going to go very differently. And that brings us to Poland, who starts pretty rural. Poland is not memed in this game at all. I would say Poland is actually anti-memed. In EU4, Poland was just like the land army. They were just the dudes with the really strong army and the really strong cavalry, and they just went, "Nay!" all the time, and that was it. That was all they did, right? In this game, Poland starts very depopulated. Very few people living in Poland. I think their entire population is like 1.5 million if they integrated all their vassals at game start. They don't have many people. They don't have much money. They only have the one town in Warsaw. Their other towns are within their vassals at game start. Sorry, not Warsaw. Krakow. Krakow is not even a town. Sorry, Krakow is a town. Warsaw is not a town at game start. The Warsaw can become a city by event in the late 1300s, I believe. Poland starts in a very unique position where they are on the ground and the Polish nobles are kicking them on the dick repeatedly. They're stomping their dick. The Polish dick at this point is mangled and shriveled, and they do not stop kicking you in the dick for a very long time. You do start with the last of the Piasts as your king. He's got really good base stats. I think on average, he actually has the highest base stats in Europe, other than some dudes who are really old. So I think Lithuania's king is slightly better than yours, but he's like 60, so he's out the door. The PS king, on the other hand, is very young, and he's got like 80, it's like 89, 89, 89 stat. It's quite high. And so he's got some unique events where he gives you a unique law. He can give you some other stuff. He tries to like reform the country a little bit, but the Shem and the Polish nobles just have kicked you in the dick too much. Now, Poland does have a good age 2, so once you do get into age 2, there are some very powerful advancements for Poland. They got like 10% tax efficiency, which is way more important in this game. 10% build cost. They got some other stuff going that I can't remember. And at any rate, Poland can build up their country pretty rapidly so long as they can get out of the early game. They can get that tax base going. They can start going. They can get that city by event built in Warsaw. They can start actually getting into the game. The problem is, of course, they start the game very, very poor. Now, Poland does actually have some cool things they can do, though, with the rural start. Lots of other rural starts are kind of slow, timid. Poland has such outrageously good RGOs, that's your trade goods, around Krakow, that you can just build nothing but RGOs for the early game, and you're getting like iron, copper, coal, lumber. Lots of people like lumber because you have to kind of ship it out west, right? And so you've got all these insanely good trade goods that you can use to start funding actually building up your country. And then once you hit age 2, those age 2 advancements kick in, and they do a lot as well. Then, of course, you've got a unique law from the Piast. What's his name? It's like one of those stereotypical Eastern European names. I don't think it was Wenceslas. It was the other dude, the last Piast king. Anyway, that dude, you've got a unique law that he gives you that helps centralize the state and try to keep some stability in there. He's got unique events where his wife dies and then he doesn't want to remarry. And you have to kind of like be like, king, come on, don't let the Piast die out. Historically, they did, but you can prevent it and keep the Piast. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Piast? You can keep them on your throne for a little bit longer. Mine died out. You have the historical alliance with the Lithuanians. And of course, there's actually this weird event. Basically, you change your marriage law to match Hungary's under the assumption that Hungary will PU you in-game, right? But what it does, it gives you a permanent defensive pact with Hungary for the rest of the game, seemingly, until something happens, maybe when you change your marriage law. This keeps Hungary from attacking you the entire game, and it keeps Hungary defending you the entire game. So Poland is pretty defendable by just working with Hungary in this situation. They work with Hungary, they work with Lithuania. They try to make sure that Bohemia doesn't take even more of their land, even though they just lost Silesia. And then they try to just beat up the Teutons. And they spend most of their game beating up the Teutons and building up their country. And they can get pretty rich and they can get pretty strong that way. The winged hussars are in age 4 and 5. There's an early hussar in age 4 and a late hussar in age 5 that you can use. Other than that, you don't really buff cavalry. Poland's not really a military nation in this game. They're a building up nation. They really can build up their economy pretty strongly. But until they do that, then they're just outrageously poor. Now, before we go further east, let's take a look at Hungary. Hungary starts with 1 city, another very rural environment. They do start with a few towns, though, that they can work with. And they do start with gold, I believe, so they can fund their economy that way. By funding their economy... Oh, I should mention, the Germans do have a unique law. The Bundergeld, or whatever it's called. Not Geld. It's like the Bundergung. The Burgung. I don't know. It's some mining thing where they can make towns cheaper. So the Germans, although they start very much without the ability to get lots of towns and cities, they do get a 20% cost reduction to their, cost, which does allow them to build them up pretty decently. So Germany's going to start the game very poor, impoverished, and it's like on you to like build up Germany, right? Well, I mean, everyone in Germany is building up. Hungary, on the other hand, they do open with 20% cav combat, but they don't open with the ability to really use it because there's not that much cavalry early in the game due to the fact that you can't really make much of a standing army. So the 20% cav combat will be more useful in age 2. For age 1, I'm going to imagine that you're going to be spending most of your time building up your country, trying to get lots of gold out of it through literal gold, and then B, just through building towns and cities and actually stabilizing the whole situation, right? The cultural makeup of the Balkans is interesting and will lead to no arguments. So I'm probably going to skip that just because it won't lead to arguments. At any rate, the Hungarians are strong at game start. Not as strong as Bohemia by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd call them second place of the big four here. So Poland comes in last place, then Austria comes in third place, then Hungary, then huge, massive, like triple power gap than Bohemia. So Hungary, Poland, Austria, and Hungary will have like similar situations of like trying to build up, but it kind of goes like Austria's better at it than Hungary, then Poland is like, they don't even have a city at game start, right? Austria also is in the HRE, that gives them all the HRE actions. Forgot about the Holy Roman Empire, that's a whole thing. So you definitely have a lot going on with Austria over here. Hungary has the Black Army in age 2, I believe, maybe age 3? Oh boy, some of these things are hard to remember off the top of my head. They do have the Black Army special unit, that's like a Giga infantry. Not as good, unfortunately, as the Janissary, but the Ottomans are definitely going to be a bit of a slow burn, so you shouldn't have to worry about the Ottomans that much until it becomes a problem. Hungary, as I mentioned, they tried to get a PU over Poland. Other than that, I guess they just wage war on their neighbors, maybe conquer them, maybe they just sit there and build up their country. The game is very much a slow burn kind of game, so Hungary just sitting there and building up Hungary is not really a bad thing. They've got lots of land, they've got lots of good land. They would very much be capable of just sitting there and building up in the early game, and there's really no problem with that. Yeah. As we move further south, Serbia, they tried to make this rivalry between the Byzantines and Serbia, but Serbia is so laughably weak that there's absolutely no way that that'll work. They do start with a pretty good king, and he does get some buffs, and you do get claims on the Byzantines, but realistically speaking, the game mechanics really do not like Serbia. Living in the mountains, you basically have no control because the proximity cost to going through the mountain is so rough that you have like no control. You've got a bunch of silver mines, and that seems to be where the majority of your income will come from. It's just building up a bunch of silver and then trying to make money on that. You do start with a unique cavalry in age 1, but it will get rapidly replaced in age 2, so there's practically no point to it. You can barely even build a standing army in age 1. You do get 10% cav combat, not much else. You do get some unique... Oh god, I forgot about that. Oh boy. So whereas the Polish get like nothing but negative estates, I think I kid you not, I think I counted it. Poland might actually have 5 unique estate modifiers to the nobility, each of which are bad. I would have to go count it. It's like 3, 4, or 5. I didn't know which one was unique to them and which one was just generically bad. But the devs took a lot of time to design content for Poland that just makes the nobility shit on them. I find that very amusing, just to be clear. I find that very, very amusing. Hungary, oh boy, I'd have to play more Hungary to give you an opinion on that. Serbia, I know, doesn't have many unique estate privileges. All they do is start with the worst ones. I would say Serbia is so weak at game start, it's actually comical. Like, I'm pretty sure Bulgaria is way stronger despite the history. They just get debuffed by like every estate privilege. It's crazy. So typically what I see happen in game is Serbia and Hungary partition Bosnia, then Serbia does nothing for the entire rest of the game because they're just too weak to do anything. Wallachia, now Serbia does have unique content. They do have stuff about conquering and like actually going on the war, and I have done it. It's difficult, but you do get content for actually like expanding south, right, and doing that stuff. Wallachia gets no content for expansion or anything like that. All Wallachia gets are, I think they get like 3 or 4 or 5 unique advancements. They basically just have discipline, fort defense, and that's all that matters. They're going to be playable just because you can have discipline and fort defense. Okay, so we've done Hungary, Serbia, Wallachia. Bulgaria doesn't really get much content either. If you're looking for a Balkans country that isn't the Byzantines, the Serbians have the most content because they're the only people who did anything in this time period, unfortunately. That takes us to the Byzantine Empire. Now, the Byzantine Empire is going to get a DLC, I think 3-4 months after launch. How much content does it have in game? It still has a lot, but the irony of most of the Byzantine content is that it's there to nerf you. and it's there to weaken you. That's not to say people haven't made them succeed. People have played them a lot, and it's not actually that hard to make them succeed. At game start, you do start in debt, and you do start with a lot of problems going on, but you also start with such a big lead over the Ottomans that it's pretty easy. I shouldn't say pretty easy, but it's not difficult to, especially if we're fighting an AI, it's not difficult to take that early game lead and push it into a lot of other things, especially because you have Constantinople, right? You got some pretty good stuff going on there. So the general idea with the Byzantines is going to be either to ignore the Italians who are still in Greece, or to take over them, or to try to push overseas, anything like that. Stabilizing your country is pretty important. I think you could probably take back Athens from Sicily pretty early. That one wouldn't be too hard. Messing with Naples is probably not a good idea, considering how strong Naples is. In Age 1, they do get, I think, 3 unique units. The Akriti, the Varasian, and the Cataphract. Of them, I think the Akriti survives until Age 2. The other ones kind of fall off and aren't terribly useful. Now, the Cataphract itself is the most powerful Age 1 unit, period. If the stats of the Cataphract, because the way military units work is each age they double their unit count. So in Age 1, an Age 1 man-at-arms is 100. In Age 2, an Age 2 man-at-arms is 200. In Age 3 is 400, 800, 1600 in Age 6, right? So the problem is you can't really use the Cataphract into later ages because it literally is half the size. So it'll do half the damage and half the tankiness. But should you get some Cataphracts out in Age 1, which is possible because the Byzantines do have some manpower, right? If you do get the Cataphract out in Age 1, you can pretty much crush a lot with it because it ends up being quite powerful. The Byzantine start isn't terrible, but it's very difficult to work with because you start with low stability, you start in debt, you start with issues, and you start with a lot of countries around you, all of whom want to annihilate you. So it is, kind of a different start. And that's what I'm trying to explain with all this stuff. There's so many different starts here, and there's so much different stuff to do that you can't, like, starting as Morocco is not going to be the same as the Byzantines, which is not going to be the same as France, which is not going to be the same as Sweden, which is not going to be the same as the Czechs, right? Like, there's just so much different stuff going on here. Okay, so that's the Byzantines. Going back north, let's talk to Lithuania. Lithuania does start pagan, and they do have events to de-paganize, and they do start with a decent king, but he starts pretty old. So far as advancements, forming the PLC is much better for Lithuania. I don't think Poland actually gets anything for forming the PLC, but Lithuania gets a lot of the Polish advancements for forming it. And I would say Lithuania starts a game weirdly strong, considering how weak it is. I don't really know a better way to describe it. It does not start the game very strong, but its unique religion... its unique religion gives its morale and cav combat at game start. So you can kind of push through and conquer as much as you can. But the issue is going to rapidly be that you need to Christianize. You need to deal with the pagans. You don't actually start as a Christian king. You start as a pagan king as well, I believe. So you've definitely got a lot of problems. Sorry, my throat. Ugh, talking this much for this long apparently has finally taken its toll on me, hey? So you definitely need to start Christianizing, and you definitely need to, deal with that stability. But you start way stronger than any of your neighbors, realistically. So Lithuania, they, compared to other rural areas, I actually should mention Lithuania does start with a city. Vitebsk, maybe, something like that. If I'm totally off base, I'm off base. But they actually do start with a city, but it's very depopulated. There's not a lot of people living there. It's just a prosperous trading realm, so they decided to count it as a city. And yeah, so realistically speaking, you can, after the Black Death sweeps through Europe, you can try to set up a bunch of migration into your city and get a lot of people working there, because you do actually have a city, so you're not that far behind, right? But you only got the one. After that, it's mostly going to be playing rural. In fact, I imagine Lithuania is going to be mostly rural. And then you just conquer a lot. I would say their start is different. I'm not entirely sure how strong it is, though. Yeah, that's really all I can say about Lithuania. That takes us to Muscovy. Now, Muscovy starts in an interesting spot, and I can't really talk about them too much because they have some of the most content in the game, but the issue is a lot of it is locked behind just sitting there and not really doing anything for like, not 100 years, but for a while. And because of that, I've never really gotten Moskva to the Russia state where you're actually in the late game. You do have a lot of content as them for sure, but a lot of that content just has the stipulation that a lot of it is being reworked. Now, I shouldn't say reworked entirely, like it'll still be there, but a lot of the numbers and stuff are being fine-tuned, some of the modifiers are being changed, because unfortunately, Muscovy is outrageously weak at game start, but scales completely out of control. Now that's because once they form Russia, and once they do that, they do get discipline in an advancement, they get lots of manpower, they get negative 100% proximity control, which means they can exert full control over everything. And because of this, the devs have realized they gave them too many modifiers, and they gave them too many numbers. And obviously, this means I can't, like, it's fun. It's fun. It's different. It's fun. That's all I can say. You're very much trying to do a rural start at this point. Moskva does start as a city. Moskva and Novgorod both start as cities. There are two in Eastern Europe. That means everybody gets a city except the Teutons, Poland, Sweden, Denmark in this area. Everybody gets a city but you. Oh, and I guess Holland doesn't either. Oh, Brandenburg doesn't either too. Oh, neither does Saxony. Okay, most people don't start with cities in North and East Europe, but some of them do. At either rate, Muscovy, Russia, they've got like a unique estates, they've got unique government reforms, they've got unique cabinet actions, they've got unique events, they've got unique situations, they've got unique on unique. There's so much different about Muscovy. And because a lot of it just comes down to conquering lots of land and then trying to urbanize that land and trying to make use out of the land, it's definitely going to be a way different start. Lithuania and Muscovy are definitely going to end up playing a good bit differently than the rest of Europe, I would say. Maybe Sweden would be similar. It would really depend on how the Sweden player decides to play it out. So my throat is like scratchy now. Now a lot of Muscovy's advancements and a lot of their events do stipulate you form Russia or are Eastern Slavic culture. So you could form Russia with Novgorod and get some of this stuff. You could form it with like Smolensk and get a lot of this stuff. That's not to say that you have to, but much like the Great Britain situation, if you form Russia with Novgorod, you'll have slightly different advancements than if you form it with Muscovy. So don't think that like there's only going to be one Russia, right? Like, even if all you want to do is play Russia, you could do it with Smolensk, Muscovy, or Novgorod. Smolensk is obviously going to be the weakest because they don't really have much content. They just have the funny cannon meme later on where they get cannon buffs. That's about it. So, yeah. Golden Horde. Golden Horde does have some content. They do have some cool things. Because they are an army-based nation, they do actually start with a standing army, and because they do start with 20% camp combat, they start with a pretty good army. Golden Horde cannot attack their Tartar yoke targets, and they can't kick them out or anything like that, so don't think there's any way to cheese it. You can't play Golden Horde in just day one Russia. You can't do that. You can't even take Kiev, nothing like that. Most Golden Horde can do maybe is attack Bulgaria or Volhynia and Halych out here. So there's not really a whole lot Golden Horde can do militarily. They could push down to Georgia, which I'll get over. They could push into the Chagatais, but realistically speaking, Golden Horde is unfortunately resigned to a fate of sitting there until the Black Death murders them. There will be some people who find better openers with them, find better ways to play them, for sure. But as of right now, I think the Golden Horde, they have some unique stuff. They can get to like outrageous cavalry combat. They can reform Mongolia. They can do stuff. It's just as of right now, I would say army-based nations aren't really the most fleshed out, other than maybe Timur and I'll get to Timur when we get to him. At either rate, the Golden Horde, they're okay. They're firmly playable if you want to do it, but it's going to be really hard. Okay, did we do everything here? Yes. I don't think I skipped anybody. I don't think so. If I did, if anyone is relevant to the early modern period, they're probably got something with them, right? Okay, Georgia. Now, Georgia does, this might surprise you, have some content. What I do like about Georgia as well is they didn't get memed as just being a giant mountain, but rather there's like a valley in between these two mountains. You can kind of see it here, you can kind of not. And that valley is where their city is. Georgia does actually start with a city. Yes, even Georgia starts with a city, my Polish friends. So this means that Georgia can sit on their city, they can build that up, and they don't get screwed by climate either. The western areas of Georgia, not as you go east into Shirvan, but the western areas actually have a nice subtropical climate that allows them to build up. Now, Georgia does have all this stuff as vassals, and other than the Golden Horde, they don't have any natural predators, let's say, in their area. So they're pretty much safe to sit here in their mountains, build up, build towns, and skill pretty decently. The Horde of Jelerids over here, they're weak. They don't really do much at all. Eventually, once they do collapse, you can push east and you can get that gold mine out of them. Is it gold or silver? Anyway, Georgia is fine. I mean, they're fine. They do have some unique advancements as well. They do have unique events. They do have... I don't actually know if they have unique governments. I think they might, but don't quote me on that. I'm going over like 72 nations here, so it's going to be a bit rough, right? Now, in the Horde of Jelerids, as a vassal of them in the west here are the Eretnids. Now, if you do play the Eretnids, this is a Turkish people right here, you can surpass the Ottomans. And in fact, let's actually talk about the Ottomans first, right? Oh boy, Ottomans have the most content in the game by far, and I don't think anyone comes close. They have a unique situation called the Rise of the Turks, I believe it's called. And this allows them to generate free claims. This allows them to do a lot of different actions. It's very different. They start with a pretty decent start here too. 2 cities and a town on the coast. They start with a lot of events and stuff that give them even more claims. They start with events that help them integrate their land. They start with, I think, the most advancements of like any nation. I think in every single age, they've got like 4 or 5 advancements. So as your average country is like 15, they've got like 40. It's insane. They don't have a formable or anything like that because they're just the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire, right? And they just continue to grow. Now, the weakness of the Ottomans is that you cannot core non-right religious land. I don't know if that'll stay there till launch, but that's a problem for them right now. So all these buffs I talked about often are just the developers helping them to get over their really, really mechanically weak start. They also start discriminating against Greek people, despite the fact that Greek people are like 70% of their country. So they're not in a great starting position. But they are ridiculously wealthy. They start with a lot of money, whereas the Greeks start in debt. They start with a large base amount of money. They do have discipline. They're in age 1, they get discipline. I think in age 2, they get discipline again. Yes, chat, everybody, that's the Turkish music. That is, they're playing the theme song. They have brought back 10% discipline Ottomans. Except they brought back 10% discipline Ottomans when basically nobody else has discipline. I should mention, by the way, Austria gets some cool advancements as well for their army. They do open with 10% morale, then they get 3% discipline again, but then they get some military tactics. So I do believe Austria has at least a tolerable army this time around at game launch, whereas in previous versions, when EU4 launched, the Austrian army was pretty bad, which is odd considering that historically, the Austrians fought the Prussians at their height, they fought the Ottomans at their height, and they fought the French at their height, and they still existed. So I think something could be said that compared to other nations, their army quality was not a complete joke. At any rate, the Ottomans have unique buildings, they have unique decisions, unique events, unique everything. Name something, the Ottomans have it unique. Unique government reform, unique estates, unique They got the dhimmi. The Islamic countries get the dhimmi as well, right? So there is so much going on for the Ottomans. It can't really be understated, or sorry, it can't really be overstated how much content the Ottomans have. Now, the reason I did mention the Eretinids earlier is because if they do manage to steal the strongest Beylik power in the Rise of the Turks event, all those events and all those decisions they can do for the event will go over to the Eretinids instead of the Ottomans. Now, they don't get the Ottoman advancements. I do believe they can form Rum and get some of them, but they won't get everything the Ottomans have. So you'll never be as strong as the Ottomans were, but you can get supposedly a lot of it. Okay. You can do that as the Karamanids as well. Any of these, right? But Ottomans, super dense. They're like a lead brick of content. It's just a lot going on there, right? This takes us down to the Mamluk Sultanate. Now, the Mamluk Sultanate also has a lot of content, much like Hungary. For some reason, both of them seem to kind of just stop getting content around the 1500s. I wonder why that is. The Mamluks start with, they're probably, I would wager, they're probably the most broken country at the start of the game. And there are some countries that could hypothetically put up a fight against them, but there's no country that has their sheer insane economical boost, outrageous army, outrageous everything. The Mamluk Sultanate at game start has, when everyone else in the game really doesn't have a standing army, or most is like 200, they have a standing army of 3,000, which I think is only matched by Delhi. I believe even the Yuan dynasty only has like 2,000 as well. And they have a standing army of the Mamluks. Now, at every single age, they get a new version of the Mamluk. So unlike other countries where they might get a unique unit for 1 or 2 ages, they get a unique Mamluk unit at every single age, which, by the way, the Ottomans also get. Shocking, I know. The Janissary comes in age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Mamluk comes in age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the Mamluks get their standing army day 1. They can basically kill any power with no real retaliation. No one can really do anything to oppose them. It's very one-sided, right? And they're also very, very rich, and they do lots of trading. Now, their advancements and a lot of the stuff they do is based on trading. They do get 5 discipline in advancement, but other than that, they're relying on 5 discipline and their Mamluks to win everything, right? Which is to say, they are pretty strong militarily. But ship-wise, I don't think they get anything. They get lots of trade modifiers, and they will not, unfortunately, be the most capable of defending the shoreline. But they do start with a decent navy, I believe, as well. They're just so crazy as a start. It's actually just kind of nutty how strong they are. There's not much to say other than that. They're just very, very strong. They do get some events. They do get some content. Their start is mostly going to be about the Nile and building this area up hyper richly. I would say because the Nile is more about agricultural goods than urban goods, there's definitely going to be more of a push to get lots of food in the Nile and then see where you can put that food. Okay, the Horde of Jalirids, the Horde of Gurgan, and the Hulaguds, you can actually reform the Ilkhanate, but I believe that's more focused for Timur. Timur comes in later. We'll talk about him later. These guys don't get any content. They can reform the Ilkhanate, technically, but they have no events for them. They have no advancements. They have nothing. So these guys are literally just here to wait for Timur to come. Yemen, Ethiopia, they get a little bit of content as well. They get, Yemen gets advancements, events. Ethiopia gets advancements, events. I haven't played as either of them because, frankly, they don't look too strong. Mali gets a lot of unique stuff as well. They start with an entire vassal empire. They get to get events and stuff to try to maintain it. I do believe they get some unique units. They start with lots of gold mines. They start very wealthy. Mansa Musa is actually your king at game start, so you literally can start with the richest man in all human history. You can actually cause inflation in the Mamluks if you take the trip to Egypt, which is funny. Other than that, I haven't looked too much into them. I did look through them. I haven't played as them, I guess I should say. So there's definitely a lot to go on here. You can get institutions down here as well if you try to trade up. So like if you set up something and you get some trade, you could try to pull down the institution from Morocco once Morocco gets it. So ironically, Africa, led by a player at any rate, could be more technologically literate than, like, at that rate, maybe definitely than India, right? Okay, Kingdom Empire. Okay, this one's gonna blow your mind. Actually, these guys right here, the Kingdom Empire, also get unique content. They get some military units. I kid you not, they get some Age 2 unique military units. They get some unique events, unique advancements, so they're pretty cool on that one. I haven't tried them though. So yeah, as we start going east, this is like a content black hole, except for Timur. Now Timur is a bit frustrating. I really wish they'd rework how he does it, but 20 years into the game, Timur comes in, and you cannot play as the Chagatai Horde into Timur. No. Timur deletes whoever is on the map, and if it's one of those crappy vassals right here, then you get the option to play as him. Timur spawns in, and I think he is the most broken thing the developers have ever added into a Europa Universalis game. When most of the game has almost no military quality, Timur spawns in and gets a unique 10% discipline, more discipline, starts as a 100 mil general, gets more discipline, gets a buff to his army, then more discipline. He has some event troops, then discipline. At any rate, Timur kills everything. In fact, the Timur spawning in is actually considered a disaster type situation. Not literally a disaster, but it's a situation that everybody can click on. And Timur gets a kill feed. He actually has a track. If you open up the Timur situation, you see his situation. It tracks how many people he's killed in battle. Unfortunately, it doesn't track how many people he's killed in battle and by sacking. I really wish it would track that as well. But it does track how many people he's killed in battle. Currently, the AI is not very good at using him, but he can declare any region to be his home region, at which point, anytime he takes land in that region, it is instantly cored for him. He can then also fabricate claims on anyone to do a Total War CB so long as they're within his home region. Then, once he does a Total War CB, any land he takes instantly flips to him and becomes cored. I have not personally tried it, but I suspect you could do this in North Africa and make that your homeland. I haven't done it though. It does seem interesting. Timur, of course, is expected to form the Ilkhanate, or at the very least conquer Persia. I do believe he can form the Ilkhanate. Its requirements are a little screwy. It might change before launch. We'll see what happens there. So Timur is pretty cool. Now the Chagatai Horde gets a little bit of content as well. Much like the Golden Horde, they get 20% cav combat opener. So both these two get 20% more cavalry combat. I'm not really sure, like, what do you do with them? Because eventually Timur's just going to come through and he's just going to go, yeah, and crush you. Sultanate of Delhi, meaning like 80% of India. I really wish I hadn't started at this start date with a giant Sultanate of Delhi, but here we are. So they start in a bad situation. They start with an impending disaster. Once the disaster starts hitting, countries will start being spit out of them. That's where Bakhmanis will come from. That's where Yanpur will come from. Stuff like that, right? And so I have not played Delhi because it doesn't look very fun to just sit there and degrade for a bit. But if you do want to play Delhi, the general gameplay is you're going to decay, then you conquer it back. Okay. The two other Indians with content are Orissa and Vijayanagar. Vijayanagar actually starts in a pretty strong position at game start. Not enough to resist Delhi by any stretch of the imagination, but not exactly a weak position either. Now, of course, Vijayanagar has some unique advancements, unique events, I believe a unique government reform, a unique subject type as well. So there's definitely some stuff here. Basically, again, as I keep saying every time, literally imagine anything in the early modern period, and there's probably some content for it right now. Orissa kind of gets the same thing. Just events. They get the same subject type, pretty good one. Orissa starts as a little bit more of a sea power. Vijayanagar is more of a land power. Vijayanagar also does have I believe they're pretty strong. I'd have to play as them again. I played as them a little bit the other day, but not that much. I have been trying to get through everything and play everything, but it's rough. So those are going to be your 3 big Indians. As we go over here into Khmer, Khmer does have a unique government reform and unique advancements, but they don't have the most events and they don't have the most stuff other than that. But they do have unique advancements, unique government type. Some events, I think, I'm not sure about that one. Mostly they're just here, like they've been fleshed out a bit, like they're gonna be different from the other people, but at the end of the day, they do have a bit of a problem with not having much to do, because what do you do as a Khmer Empire? You just conquer and then, okay. Majapahit also likewise is kind of the Khmer problem. They give them a unique government, they give them unique advancements, they got some events. I think Majapahit definitely has events, but at the end of the day, what do? You conquer Indonesia, and I guess conquering Indonesia could be fun, but then what do? And I think that's kind of I think that's why the devs haven't fleshed these two out that much so far. Like, they gave them a lot of fleshing out to make them unique, to give them different stuff to do, but it's like at the end of the day, what do you do with them, right? Especially with how institutions spread, it's gonna be really hard for them to get to the institutions. Okay. Yuan Dynasty. Yuan must collapse. I don't believe there's any actual in-game mechanic to stop it. You can try to play Yuan, keep it together, and then fight the rebels. That definitely is a gameplay style, but the expected gameplay is that you start as Yuan, pick one of the successor Chinese rebels, and then play as them. So I've seen Ming win, I've seen Wu win. Other than that, I've just seen Ming win. And as far as content, I'm not really sure how much there is to do. They do have a lot of situations. I think just the first starting years is like 2 or 3 situations fire. So situations like big global events, right? After that, a lot of Manchuria gets decolonized to have the Manchurians do stuff. I don't think they actually have any content either, sadly. And then you mostly just play as China, probably Ming China, and then you just sit there. And I'm sure there's stuff to do, but not that much. Japan likewise has a similar problem where they have the Jedi or something, but oh my god, there's like 900 tags in Japan, by the way. Okay, not that many. There's like 100, I think the actual count is 83 tags you can play in Japan. They count as building, but the problem is you have to wait there for like 50 years for Japan to kind of collapse. Then once you do, you get the warring states stuff and you fight each other a lot, but it's a lot of waiting to get to play Japan. So as you might imagine, I didn't wait. I think I got to like 15 years and then I got bored out of my mind and quit out. But there are a lot of unique advancements. I mean, just for China, I do want to specify for China, when I say stuff to do, I mean, you own China, so what's left, right? So I should specify here that China does get a lot of unique content. They get a unique religion, they get unique sliders, they get a lot of stuff, is all I'm saying. So like, don't think when I say what's left to do, there's a lot of stuff to do here. Like, the religions work differently across the board. So Catholicism works different from Sunni, works different from Hindu, works different from Theravada, works different from, I can't remember what they put in China, works different from Shinto. They called it something. I can't remember what they called it. So there's different mechanics for each religion, and there's different cultural advancements as there's different stuff. So for example, if you were to play Japan, you've got the honor system. They actually just gave them the honor system this time about. They got the honor system. You've got seppuku. I'm not even joking, you do. So when you play China, you've got 2 things you have to manage. I can't remember what they are. It's like you have to manage your integrity or something. I don't remember. Khmer's got different stuff. Majapahit's got different stuff. So like, when I say there's something to do, I'm saying from like a war perspective. You can sit there and you can manage your countries. You can build up. The vast majority of my games are me literally just sitting here and building up. Just to be clear, okay? So don't take the wrong impression from this one. Is, you know, if what I'm trying to say is Khmer doesn't really have many situations or events after they conquer stuff, but they do have they've got different stuff to manage and different stuff to deal with and different stuff to build while they get there. Same with Majapahit. Japan, I wish I could play Japan, but I don't have it in me to sit there for, I guess I could just 5-speed, I don't know. China, likewise. China seems probably the least interesting. I don't know how you Chinese players do it. Like, once you conquer China, what's left? You're the strongest country in the game. Almost bow to you. Oh, I should mention China in age 1. In each age, there's 3 different institutions. In age 1, China is the only people who have the meritocracy institution. The meritocracy institution is not very strong, though. It seems to be mostly a backup institution where the Eastern countries, if they've run out of things to research, they can start researching the meritocracy institution. It is not a very strong one. Everything in it is like half as strong as other institutions. It's just like a neat little thing where the game starts and then China's like technologically supposed to start the game a little bit ahead, which is fine. You know, that's how it should be realistically. And then they fall a little bit behind and a little bit behind as the other institutions start hitting. But yeah, right at game start, China does have a unique institution. It's only China and I believe Vietnam, but I don't think Vietnam's got any content. Or what's this called now? Die Viet. Okay, so that finishes most of this world. I believe the only 2 remaining things with content, and I mean actual content, gameplay, unique mechanics, because I'm going to double down here. I'm going to remind you guys when I say, what do you do? There's unique content here and here and here and here and here. Okay, there is just, I realized I might have been saying it a bit poorly. That would lead you to think that you're just going to get boring generic gameplay. Okay, as we move out west, the only 2 I've seen, but I haven't like literally looked everywhere. The Aztec who are like right here get some unique content, and then there is some unique content right here as well for the Inca. I have not personally played them though, so there is some stuff to do. They do get unique advancements, unique government types. The Aztec have to do the flower wars, and so there's stuff to do there, right? So don't get me wrong. I think the Inca, some people, I have not seen anyone play the Inca or the Aztec though. Literally nobody. There's like the creator Discord, and sometimes I can like look at what other people are doing and be like, oh, you know, like taking notes, like, oh, so that's what that country does. Because I think exploring this map and exploring what each of these countries can do and their advancements and all that stuff, I think that's very interesting to me. I also like all the historicalness. Like for you guys, I guess learning that Austria moved their capital down to Graz, for you, some people might look at that and be like, oh, okay, so what does that do in game? I'm like, well, it kind of debuffs you. It's not very good. You're like, oh, why would you do that? I'm like, well, I kind of liked learning that they did. I like learning that they moved their capital to Graz, that Milan moved it down to Pavia. You know, this stuff is cool. That, you know, Poland gets the event for Warsaw. I don't think moving your capital to Warsaw is actually, well, I mean, you want the free city though, so it's rough, right? Like you want the free city for moving your capital, but then you lose control around all the areas you built on Krakow, so it's a bit of a tough call, right? But I mean, you get what I mean. I like learning all these history, like all these countries I've been talking about here. They all got history. They all got stuff. You learn about like the king of Serbia at the time. You learn about the Byzantines and their shenanigans. You learn about Georgia. Like all this stuff is like beautifully done, well made. Like you can just play a country and you can just play Georgia and be like, okay, time to see if we can make Georgia work. And you just build, you know, in this weird area right here. I played Genoa, and you just have like the little, I don't know what you call this coastline here. I'm sure there's a name for like the Genoese coastline. Is it just called the Genoese coastline? And you know, I like learning that Michelangelo had a feud with Francesco, and this was like the biggest scandal in Italy for decades. Meanwhile, 10 million people just died in China. So, yeah, I would say end thoughts here as I wrap up this video. Number one, once again, if you actually made it this far, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment down below. But two, and I think most importantly, this game has a lot in it, and I think people will very much enjoy it. I very much think people who are historically literate or want to be historically literate, because, you know, sometimes just wanting to learn is as good as learning. It's fun, right? And I think people will very much enjoy this game and enjoy everything going on in it. And there is a lot for you to experience. And this is just going to be on launch. After launch, there's going to be more good too. So at the current rate of things, And at the current rate of content and the current rate of things that I've seen the developers doing, I do think that you'll probably be able to get out. And I mean, there's situations, you got like 30 Years War situation, you got Italian War situation, you got the Hussite War. So even if all you're doing is like playing in Germany around here, even if you have no content, there's all this content going on around you, things going on around you, right? So I really think people will probably be able to get 300-400 hours out of the game's launch before they get bored. I'd wager about 300, maybe more. I mean, it really depends on what kind of person you are, right? Because like I could go play a Khmer game today. If I could stream this game, I can't, but if I could just go stream me playing Khmer for like the next, well, maybe 20 hours before I get bored, you know, after I owned everything, right? Or maybe it'd be interesting to play Masha Pahit and just like colonize or attempt to colonize or whatever. I don't know. You just do that stuff, right? Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.